Shalom, family. Welcome to another Faithful Friday Sabbath class. We're going to go ahead and continue in the book of the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 18. So we're going to start in chapter 18, and we're going to start at verse 1. Okay? So Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 18, and verse 1. And it reads, Nevertheless, thy saints had a very great light, whose voice they hearing and not seeing their shape, because they also had not suffered the same things, they counted them happy. But for that they did not hurt them now, but for that they did not hurt them now, of whom they had been wrong before, they thanked them and besought them pardon for that they had been enemies. Instead whereof thou gavest them a burning pillar of fire, both to be a guide of the unknown journey and a harmless sun to entertain them honorably. So here we're dealing with a situation, and it's really foretelling of the Israelites in Egypt, okay? In dealing with how the Most High God provided an angel that was guiding them and taking care of them. So, and although that was something that, it was counted, joyful, even though it was something that we didn't truly deserve, but it was because of the Most High's kindness and keeping his word and his promise unto Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that he did it. But the love that was shown to us, we didn't reciprocate as a whole back unto the Most High God, So, but nevertheless, but yes, the Most High God gave us, a burning pillar of fire, an angel, to guide us. So to be there to lead us, as well as, being, like I said, a harmless son for us. So because the Most High God, his intent was not to hurt us, and also that's something to where, many of us in this day and age, we would love to have that type of experience, to be able to see the Most High and his works in such a way, but the Most High God finds it that much more honorable and noble of us to not have seen those things, but yet and still believe and worship him. It actually makes you that much more faithful. Because think about it. They had those things, but did that truly make them any more obedient? It didn't. Did it make them any more trusting? Not really. Any more faithful? No. So you can have all those things. It doesn't necessarily mean, it's going to be a better outcome. So, and, yet and still you have those who they don't have any of that, but yet and still they're reading the Bible and joining that into the history and archaeology and the thing they're able to find and see that, hey, man, this is a true book. This isn't just a fairy tale. And, hey, this is something that if I'm going to choose anything to believe in and apply myself to, this would be it. This would be it. So verse 4, for they were worthy to be deprived of light and imprisoned in darkness, who had kept thy sons shut up, by whom the uncorrupt light of the law was to be given unto the world. So when it came down, literally unto the Egyptians, but this is also the other nation, even those of Israel who, are walking the path of the dark side, walking the path of sin. It also pertains, as well. You become worthy to be deprived of light. So, and it says, and imprisoned in darkness. So, and that's really not where you want to be, but your actions, it puts you there. So, and it put them there, who had kept thy sons shut up, because now it becomes you reap what you sow. You had no problem with putting others into a harsh form of slavery, because slavery itself isn't necessarily a problem. And people say, damn, what do you mean slavery is not a problem? You're a slave now. When you go to your 9 to 5, you're a slave. So, yeah, you get paid. But are you truly getting paid what it is you are worth and the effort you're putting in? No, you're not. You're getting paid pennies on the dollar. So, but you're just man, only for some well-paid slave. Many ain't well-paid and taking care of slave. You barely getting enough to get by. But yet and still, you're a slave. So, it's one of those things. The problem becomes when now you're a slave with no rights. Now you're a slave being treated cruelly. Now you're in chattel slavery. That's when slavery becomes a problem. That's when it becomes a major problem. So because of how you're being treated and dealt with, you're being treated in a way that is inhumane, less than human. That's when it becomes a problem. So like it says, by whom the uncorrupt light of the law, because that's the thing, the law itself, when you read the scriptures, it doesn't have corruption. People may want to label it as corrupt, label the Bible as corrupt or things of that nature, but no, the Bible itself is not corrupt. Man, woman, or child that may pick up the Bible and teach certain things, yeah, they can be corrupt. They can use these things in a way to beguile, mislead, deceive, manipulate. They can do that. So regardless of what religious background they claim to be from, Catholic, Christian, Jehovah's Witness, Nation of Islam, or even claim to be in the truth. Anyone can take this and corrupt it. Remember, look at the Pharisees and Sadducees. So the biggest problem wasn't necessarily that they didn't believe in God or that they didn't try to, follow the scriptures or things of that nature. The problem was really the deception. You were keeping many of the outward things. They were observing the 7-day Sabbath, keeping a lot of the customs, the things outwardly that if you looked at their lives, they would seem to be righteous. They would seem to be doing the good thing or the right thing. What was the problem? The problem was behind closed doors, they were corrupt. When you really sit down and had conversation with you would over time begin to learn that, dang, they really shady. They seem right, but no, they're really shady. They're really wrong. Given unfair and unjust counsels. So, given unfair and unjust counsels, and being in a space where they weren't dealing with the people the way that they should have, justly. That's a problem. So those things were problems. So that's where you're dealing with the incorruption. But the law itself, it has nothing to do with being corrupt. It has everything to do with being just. So you have that. And it says the uncorrupt light of the law was to be given unto the world, because it was not only to the world of Israel, but it was also given unto the world at large, given for everyone to be kept, and for everyone to keep, for everyone to keep. It was there for everyone to make sure that they followed it and applied it, that they kept it, because that's what everyone is going to be held accountable for. Because if that wasn't the case, because you don't see him, Most High God, he ain't out there trying to judge the penguin. He ain't out there judging the squirrel and what how you live in it. No, you don't read that. That's not the case. He's judging mankind, so human beings, because they were the ones that received the law that are going to be held to the standard of its application. That's the reality. So, because again, like I said in the latter end, by whom the uncorrupt light of the law was to be given unto the world. Okay, that's what's supposed to be guiding all of us, and that's the government that is to come back upon the face of the earth when the Most High God returns with His Son, Hamashiach Yahweh Shai, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ. So, and they're chariots and angels. So, this is what's going to be the standard. So, verse 5. When they had determined to slay the babes of the saints, one child being cast forth, and saved, to reprove them, thou tookest away the multitude of their children, and destroyedest them altogether in a mighty water. So, showing literally going back, dealing with the story of Moses, when the Egyptians had determined to kill the babies of the saints, because it's, again, people use saints very openly and very ambiguous, as if it just applies, to just la-di-da to anybody that seems good. But no, when you're dealing with the saints, you're literally dealing with the children of Israel. That's who you're dealing with. So those are the saints of the Most High God. That's who he's dealing with or making reference. That when you were taking their babes, and remember, they were even saints even when they weren't applying the law as a whole. Letting you know, saint is not something, although used in that way, is not something that is necessarily relegated to one being good-natured. It's rather being relegated to one being an Israelite, one being of the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's what makes you a saint. So it's your birthright. It's part of who you are, how you're identified. It's an epithet used to describe the children of Israel. These are the Most High saints. So, because like I said, to slay the babes of the saints, when they had to relearn the law, statutes, and commandments. That was the whole reason why they had to, get purged and learn everything in the wilderness, and Moses teaching them, because in Egypt, they weren't living righteous lifestyles. So they were living very much so wicked lifestyles. So that's why they had so much problem trying to get it right in the wilderness, because they had been doing things according to, moving to the beat of their own drum for so long. It was hard to reprogram them, to get them hardwired and reprogrammed to conforming in righteousness. So just as many people in this day and age struggle as they're coming out of the world into the truth, because you're so used, you've spent, 20, 30, 40, 50, years, 60 years moving in wickedness, doing many things the wrong way, but although some things the right way, and some, hey, they come from a more noble background. So it might be a situation where, with some, you might meet brothers like that. It might be like, dang, you're already doing so many of these things, you just got to clean up a few of these and you be all right. But those few things may be the things they really don't want to do. Might just be the case. So, like I said, to say the babes, the saints, one child being cast forth and saved. That one child being cast forth and saved was Moses. To reprove them, to reprove, to correct again. Like, nah, this ain't the way how these things should be ran. This is not how this should be handled. Thou tookest away the multitude of their children and destroyed them altogether in a mighty water. Why? Because you're destroying the multitude of our children, and that wasn't a problem for you. So therefore, judgment has come back unto you. You've been recompensed. You've been repaid for what it is you've done. And as you were throwing our babies into the rivers to feed them, so hey, your children be destroyed in the rivers, in the water, by the water. Verse 6, of that night were our fathers certified afore, that assuredly knowing unto what oaths they had given credence, they might afterwards be of good cheer, because knowing that we made a blood covenant with the Most High God. So we should be in a space to be happy, to be able to make an oath and promise to the living power, because most of all other people and nations and tongues are praying, giving oaths, and doing things unto deities that don't really exist, that they aren't real. Like you're doing these things to, as they say, figments of your imagination. So now, reading on, verse 7. So thy people were accepted, both the salvation of the righteous and destruction of the enemies. So that's part of, and remember, this is part of one of those things that it runs in tandem with the scriptures. That, like it says, of God's people, because everyone, I'm a child of God. Well, this is it. So of God's people, of thy people, his people, was accepted. You have to accept both these two things, both the salvation of the righteous, those doing the right thing according to not me or not any other man, woman, or child, but according to the Most High God, according to his word. And the destruction of the enemies. Okay? Whose enemies are we dealing with here? Most High God's enemies. Their destruction. That runs paralleled with this. It runs in conjunction with this. That in order for you to desire, and that's the part people feel so uncomfortable with and they don't want to acknowledge, in order to have salvation, you have to have destruction. It was the same with Noah, the same in Egypt. It's going to be the same in this day and age. That salvation comes first with judgment and destruction. That's how it runs. Like it, love it, or hate it. And it's not necessarily because even God, like we talk, he it's not his will that he's just out here just trying to destroy it, and that's what gives us rocks. So that's what makes him happy, and that's not how he gets down. Well, he's always bringing some type of judgment. We see, dang, he always judging. Well, he's God of order and strict according to his policy, his laws. So those things to be either done or not done accordingly. So knowing we're capable of doing it because he created us, he knows what we're capable and not capable of. So he's saying, I'm not asking a hard thing. I'm not asking something that is impossible to do. Else I wouldn't ask you to do it. And then, even for what it is I'm asking for you to do your best to apply it. Fight to apply it. So, but like I said, so thy people were accepted, both the salvation of the righteous and destruction of the enemies. That's what we got to accept. Because that's what's going to ultimately happen. That's still what is in play to this very day. And that's what we're waiting for, the salvation of the righteous and the destruction of the enemies. So that's what is going to happen. And that's something you have to learn to accept in your mind and your spirit. If that's something you struggle with, of course, yeah, I'll be the first to tell you, it's not something that is joyous on both ends, because you look at it where, yeah, you want the righteous to be saved, but you also understand that those that don't fit that realm, that persona, they're going to be on the other end being destroyed. And for those that are going to be destroyed, you're looking at, well, those are my friends, family members, co-work people I went to school with, people, neighbors, and all these people that are going to be destroyed. You look at all of the carnal, the connection aspect, and that's tough, to see all those people, being lost or destroyed. That's part of what was tough, even for others. I mean, shoot, name the number one Noah. That's part of why, you read that, hey, he was drunken in his tent, because, man, he was hundreds of years old. We be having connections after 10, 15, 20, shoot, man, it was 5, even it's 3 years nowadays. You got 3 years knowing somebody that can be a pretty solid connection. So imagine, can you imagine hundreds? People I know, imagine people, oh yeah, I know them for like 200 years, them 150, oh man, them 300, 400, and to lose them like that, and to lose all these people at one time, that's a lot to process. And still life goes on. I still gotta keep living and figure things out for me and my family. Man, that's a lot to handle. So I don't blame her. I understand. If I was in some, probably would have been in the same case. You know, um, but it's one of those things we have to understand that regardless of how we feel, how does the Most High feel, and what does His Word say, and we have to accept that. So, verse 8: For wilt thou didst punish our adversaries, by the same thou didst glorify us whom thou hast called. See, it runs in tandem. Like, yeah, it's a situation where, yeah, you're going to punish even our adversaries, but you're also going to glorify us in the same. That's what's going to happen even in this modern day and age. For the Most High God's people, He's going to save those that are worthy to be saved, those that are moving righteously in His eyes, righteously enough in His eyes. He's going to save them, but then the adversary, the enemies, they're going to be destroyed. So that's just the reality. Now, verse 9: For the righteous children of good men did sacrifice secretly. It said, for the righteous children of good men did sacrifice secretly, and with one consent made a holy law, that the saints should be alike partakers of the same good and evil. The fathers now singing out the songs of praise. But now let's read 10. But on the other side, there sounded an ill according cry of the enemies, and a lamentable noise was carried abroad for children that were bewailed. Because, hey, and notice, it was a situation where, for the Most High, like, man, and one of the things to see even here good too is understanding, even like what we would say, in the world, oh man, that's a good man, that's a good bro, that's a good one. Because you understand certain things they're not doing, and when it comes down to things like, all right, they're not raping, they ain't murdering, they ain't robbing, you on that, all right, you're a pretty good person. And to just be in a space where the treatment that the Israel at that time were receiving in Egypt, it was not something that they had done to be worthy to receive. It wasn't something that, oh, these people, they just going around from town to town murdering people or murdering children. It was a situation that, where they were just going around or just, raping people or things like, those things weren't happening, in terms of like they were doing as a people. Yeah, of course, amongst the Egyptians, like you may have had, yeah, always some new, yeah, individuals that may have done those things, sure, at all points in time, as it is to this day. But it wasn't anything that they were doing as a whole to where, all right, now this is good. It was a political thing. So now it's one of those things. So we're going back, verse 10. But on the other side, there sounded ill according cry of the enemies. And lamentable noise was carried abroad for children that were bewailed. And that more like going back to what? The slaying of the firstborn. So verse 11. The master and the servant were punished after one manner. And like at the king, so suffered the common person. Because everyone felt that loss, the loss of that firstborn. Didn't matter if it was from the Pharaoh all the way down to, a servant who just their job was to clean the, outhouse or, the toilet, whatever else it is, be the janitor. So 12. So they all together had innumerable dead with one kind of death. They all had, all took a loss. There was a lot of loss of life. That's why it says innumerable, a lot of loss of life, and also one kind of death. So neither were the living sufficient to bury them. For in one moment the noblest offspring of them were destroyed. Look at that, in one moment. And that's even reflected even to this day. The Most High, in one moment, can change everything. Think about it. One moment, change everything. Cause one event to happen to change everything. You got to think about that. Verse 13. And it says, for whereas they would not believe anything by reason of the enchantments upon the destruction of the firstborn, they acknowledged this people to be the sons of God. That's what it took. That's what it took. It didn't have to come to that, but yet and still, like with other things, and even with some people, it had to come to that. Didn't have to, but it had to. And it was one of those things where the Most High, he already knew what it was going to come to, and also want to go there, because now I get to show you how all these things unfold and show you my power and my might through how these situations come together. Verse 14, for while all things were in quiet silence, that night was in the midst of her swift course, thine almighty word leaped down from heaven, out of thy royal throne, as a fierce man of war, into the midst of a land of destruction. The Most High, he only got to give the word. He ain't got to move a muscle. He ain't really even got to actually speak words through his mouth, because he got powers of telepathy. So it's one of those things, but, he gives the word, but others carry it out. Other spirits carry it out. So, and he has control over all that he's made. So he's a spirit, but has control of the physical because he made the physical. He made space, time, and matter. So he made all those things. So all those things fall within his realm of control, because he's not a limited power. He's not limited to, because we make something, we can build a couch and we ain't got no control over that couch. We can't just move it here or command to move, it'll move. Most High, he can move and command anything and everything within creation. Even the thing that technically we made. But yeah, it's like, yeah, you made it, but within the confounds of what I made. So it's still within my reach. So 16, and brought thy unfeigned commandment as a sharp sword, and standing up filled all things with death, and it touched the heaven, but it stood upon the earth. So remember, his word, it comes as a sharp sword. Anything the Most High says, that's what it is. That's what it is going to be. Most High has power to where, hey, if it's something he wants you to drop dead, you're going to drop dead. So now physically, they may do an autopsy and find, oh, this person, they died of, they had cardiac arrest or a stroke or, yeah. But the Most High is the one that moved upon whatever, organisms or blood cells or, things that nature, in order to ultimately cause that heart attack to happen, or that stroke to happen. So it's still of the Most High. Just because it's of the Most High doesn't mean that there aren't things that we can understand scientifically, or in this case medically, but still scientifically, that, okay, this is how the Most High God did this, So it's like, yeah, Most High can bring the, tornado. Now, someone can look at things from as they say, meteorological sense. Meteorologist looks at these things. That's one looks at, the weather pattern, things of that nature. Um, and they can see, oh, it looks like, well, when hot air starts coming close and mixing with cold air, and when the wind begin that mixing, it can begin to cause this weird yin and yang connection and spin and this turbulence that these high winds that begin to pick up and ultimately form this funnel shape that we call a tornado. Yeah, sure, but the Most High was still the one that caused those things to begin to form through pushing, causing his angels to push more of the hot air, this more of the cooler this way to form these things in this area. Still of the Most High. We just have ways to better understand how the Most High may, cause these things to happen, but it's still credited unto him. So now, let's continue. Verse 17. Then suddenly, visions of horrible dreams troubled them sore, and terrors came upon them unlooked for. So, and of course, shoot, hope ain't nobody really looking for terrors, but things that you didn't expect. So that's the big part of it. Unlooked for is just things you didn't expect to happen. Because when you expect it, what are you doing? You looking like, damn, this is probably gonna happen. That's probably gonna happen. So you're on edge. You're more aware. You're more locked in because it's like, okay, I know a number of things can happen. But in this case, it was no. Like I said, then suddenly these things happen without warning. Catches you off guard. Visions of horrible dreams. Horrible dreams would be what we would call what? A nightmare. You're having visions of nightmares. That's what you're having. It said that's what troubled them sore. Those are the things you waking up in night sweats or you scared to go to sleep, because it's no longer peaceful. It's no longer soothing. And that's a cold piece of work because sleep is essential for us as human beings. It's essential. It's essential for many living creatures, but for us, it is essential to have sleep every day. We were not made to go days without sleep. So, even a day is not healthy. The all nighter, I'm just up all night. 24 hours no sleep is not healthy. Let alone, but as you build up, it just starts to wreak havoc on your mind and body. So even at 24 hours ain't good because it starts to wreak havoc on your mind. You become mentally impaired. So even if certain ways physically you're not greatly impaired, but it starts hurting here. So now to be in a state where your sleep is lacking and that's being troubled, for an extended period of time, you messed up, because even if you're getting those few hours, even if you're even not even if you're sleeping 3 hours a night, that's a problem. Your body is not meant to function off of people who just, oh yeah, I just get 4 hours of sleep every night. Nah, your body ain't meant to function just off of 4 hours of sleep a night. I just push through it and stuff. Those things start affecting you. So you having like nightmares and trouble sleeping, you're not, even if you're always getting interrupted sleep, that's not good for you. And that leads to other sleep issues, sleep apnea and things that sleep paralysis, and those things are also contributing factors of being when your sleep is being constantly interrupted. Like that leads to other health issues. So that's not good. But those things happen. Those things judgment as well. 18. And one thrown here and another there, half dead, showed the cause of his death. 19. For the dreams that troubled them did foreshow this, lest they should perish and not know why they were afflicted. See, that's cold too. Lest you should perish, lest you should die, and not know why you were suffering, why you were going through these things. But they learned. In this case, they knew that why. It was a situation where, because as a nation, they were quickly moving wrong towards towards another people. Set up wrong from the beginning. Excuse me. So, it's man, the same thing this day and age. Excuse me. For all those that are going to be destroyed, there is not only a reason as to why, but they are going to know ultimately why they're being destroyed. It's not going to be a secret. It's not going to be a hidden thing. So it's going to be something that they are going to know. It's because they were in sin. They were living wrong according to the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High God. And the Most High God is bringing forth judgment and vengeance for that. Everyone is going to know. Most High is going to make sure everyone knows that he is the real and living God, and that he is bringing forth judgment for the sin that they have committed or been committing. So now, verse 20. Yea, the tasting of death touched the righteous also, and there was a destruction of multitudes in the wilderness, but the wrath endured not long. So now, why I say, yea, the tasting of death touched the righteous also? Because that the children of God, who are supposed to be righteous, they suffer for their sins as well. So that's what dealing with. Even the children of God, the sons of God, daughters of God, they suffered as well. So not dealing with literally those that were righteous died, but rather that it was a situation where the Israelites as a whole, being the saints, being the righteous, they, suffered as well for their sins. So now, verse 21. For then the blameless man made haste and stood forth to defend them. So to see, now it changes. Then it switched from the righteous to now the blameless. So the blameless, because here, like you're saying, righteous is dealing with those who, like I said, as a whole, but now dealing with the blameless man, he stood up for him. Blameless, it's letting you know that there's a distinction. Now I'm making a difference. So, like we know, the ones that he found blameless. So instead to defend them and bringing the shield of his proper ministry. See, proper ministry is a shield. You may not think of it as such, but how you operate within your ministry at any level of leadership, but especially from the top, that is a shield unto you and unto others, even of your flock, even of your congregation, because the Most High God will take your word into consideration, your action into consideration, that, because I have so much respect for this person, how they move, I'll listen to, and I'll have some grace and mercy on this person. That's why another reason why it's important for you to be as just as possible, as righteous as possible, because your prayers may very well help the next person when their prayers may not be able to get through. Most like, I ain't trying to listen to this person, but you know what? If you're going to defend, all right, you want another chance? This time I'll give him another chance. Yeah, this time I'll bring it through just for you, So normally I wasn't, but all right, bet I'll do it. That can help, But again, like I said, and bringing the shield of his proper ministry, even prayer. That's it. It's both in terms of how you operate, but even the things you say directly, it matters. You may not think it matters because you're not in a space where it's like I give an immediate prayer and I get an angel that comes and says, or I get an immediate dream, or I get immediate words that are said back. But it doesn't necessarily mean that, just because those things don't happen, that it's as if the Most High God is just turning a blind eye, or he's not listening, So, just know those things help. Scriptures tell you. So, like it says, Even prayer and the propitiation of license set him he set himself against the wrath, and so brought the calamity to an end, declaring that he was thy servant. And that propitiation of life, that propitiation is the forgiving, and reconciliation of sins and things of that nature. So, and that license, that permission, you know. So having that, permission for the reconciling, and atoning of sins. So, like I said, set himself against the wrath, and so brought the calamity to an end, putting his own neck on the line, and bringing about, the wrath that was upon the children of Israel, and this kind of making reference to the righteous, but Moses being a blameless man, that hey, he interceded when the righteous was going left. And like I said, and so brought the calamity to an end, declaring that he was thy servant. So, him putting his neck on the line, showing that look, man, I'm here to serve you and to try to do it just as possible. So verse 22. So he overcame the destroyer, not with strength of body nor force of arms. Because that's the thing. We always look at, overcoming things, and we're so tied to the carnal aspect. Oh yeah, I'm strong, and I work out, but like I say, he overcame the destroyer, but it wasn't a situation in that destroyer, that angel, you know, in some, the destroyer being it'll reference in terms as being, Satan, in some cases. So it'll reference being Satan, or just, an evil spirit, or just, an angel. But nevertheless, we know the destroyer was a messenger of some sort, was an angel of some sort. So, but like I said, overcoming him, but not with strength of body. So it wasn't about how much he was able to bench press or curl, or how fit he was, but, and not, with strength of body nor force of arms, but with a word subdued he him that punished. So alleging the oaths and the covenants made with the fathers. So now going back to when the Most High was sending his destroying angels, hey, understanding that, look, the words and everything, the promise he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, these are the things you need to keep in mind. Verse 23. For when the dead were now fallen down by heaps, one upon another, standing between, he stayed the wrath and parted the way to the living. So Moses, he didn't just idly stand by. He wasn't like hey man, well shoot, they deserve it, they can get it. Man, the way they be talking, treating me, he still had compassion on, hey, look, this we can give him another chance. We can fight for him. We can remember what you said. So that's a very honorable and noble man, because how many people in Moses' position would have done the same? Verse 24. From the long garment was the whole world, and in the 4 rows of stones was the glory of the fathers with the glory of the fathers graven, and the majesty upon the diadem of his head. This is making reference to the whole priestly garment, and dealing with all those things and what it stood for. We'll end it at verse 25. Verse 25, unto these the destroyer gave place, and was afraid of them, for it was enough that they only tasted of the wrath. So like it says, for unto thee the destroyer, which, leaving in context that being that destroyer, the destroying angel, that being Satan, that key destroyer. So, but remember, Satan's also a tool of the Most High, used to destroy. So, and a destroying angel, that's what Satan is. So that's all an evil angel is. So now unto thee the destroyer gave place, and was afraid of them. So why? Because now it's a situation where now he has to stay his hand. So Most High said that's enough. For it was enough that they only tasted of the wrath. to the Most High God, say, hey, that's it. Stay your hand. Just like when the destroying angel came unto King David, when David numbered all of Israel when that was a sin because Levi wasn't supposed to be numbered, amongst all of Israel, numbered to war. They weren't supposed to. So David sinned in that regard. And then, hey, Most High God sent that destroying angel, but then Most High God also told him that, hey, all right, stay your hand. You know, David was still scared because the angel was still there with his sword, you know. But nevertheless, that concludes Wisdom of Solomon chapter 18. Hope you learned something, got a better understanding of that chapter. Most High permit, next time we can begin Wisdom of Solomon chapter